Alright, y'all. So I know I look a mess for one, and as you see, once again, I'm not home, but get used to this not being home bit, and I have Mr. Moo with me. So today is actually not I'm not actually probably gonna post this while I'm here. It's Saturday the 17th. I am actually probably going to post this when I go back to Tampa on Monday, or I mean Tuesday. I don't go home Monday. I have rehearsal Monday. I don't go home Monday. So I'm probably gonna post this when I go back to Tampa. This is going to be all about Albert part 2, because I am still writing this story, and I'm still writing smut and trash, and the smut and trash was kind of popping. So I said I needed to share this because I am so proud of my writing lately, especially smut writing. So, okay. So, when last we left off, and I actually retooled all of the stuff that I read on the last All About Albert. So when last we left off, I said this story was all over the place. I actually made it a lot more organized. It's actually on fanfiction.net. If you want to read what I have prior to the smut and trash, it is on fanfiction.net. I will post links in the description so you can see what I've written thus far. I'm currently stuck on one of the regular parts. I have kind of writer's block with where I want that to go. So I went back and started writing trash again. But when the last time I read it for you guys, it was like literally right before Wesker and our heroine Annika had sex. So, I'm gonna be I'm gonna read to you the very last part of that chapter. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to print this, but since I'm not home, I can't print it and read it off that way. So, let's see, where do I want to start this? I could start it there, but it's embarrassing. So I don't know why I'm blushing already, but this is hot. It's too hot. It's just so much hotness. So okay, do I want to read this part? Okay. This is probably how she got pregnant, which we know how, but like the how of the how she got pregnant. So, okay. I will skip that part. And you know what? I'll skip it. So, at the end of after they sleep together for the very first time, and it's Annika's actual very first time, this is kind of what happens, and I love this part. So I'll read this in its stead. Albert looked down at Annika's body. She was completely drenched in sweat. Her crimson hair was disheveled as tiny tendrils clung to her alabaster forehead. Her breathing was shallow, and her entire body was alight with agonizing pain while experiencing the delicious aftershocks of pleasure. Everything was mystifying. Everything felt unbridled. Nevertheless, Annika was filled with overwhelming ecstasy. "Albert," she whispered, looking up at him with a feeble smile. "Shh." He hushed her softly as he brushed the sweat-matted hair from her brow. "You don't have to say anything, Annika." Annika said meekly as she stared lovingly into his dual-colored eyes. "I love you, Albert." Albert looked down with her for a moment with no expression. He should have foreseen something like this occurring. However, he wasn't exactly in his typical balanced frame of mind when this tryst began. Albert knew there would never come a time where he would even remotely reciprocate her feelings for him. He loved knowledge, he loved science, he loved power, but people were something he could live without. As cruel as it would be, he figured it was best to be honest with her and not lead her on with false promises or unrequited affection. "Poor Annika," Albert whispered to her softly. "Giving your heart to me, that's the last thing you want to do." Okay, so the reason why I have that particular like last phrase in there, that poor Annika, giving your heart to me is the last thing you should do, is because in the original Wesker's Conquest, he was leading her on with false promises of love and marriage and blah blah blah. I kind of had him like the opera Don Giovanni. He was that kind of like seducer, where he could like seduce somebody by promising them love and affection even though he knew it wasn't going to happen. So in this one, I kind of like that I kind of disavow my previous fan fiction by saying he didn't want to do any of that. So, yeah, so that's what happens at the very end of that particular chapter. Which that chapter, since I started naming the titles of the chapters, you'll see that if you click on the link for the fanfiction.net stuff, that chapter is actually called it's two titles to each chapter. It's the first chapter is, hold on, let me see. I gotta go up. Is part 1, because it's all done in parts. Part 1, Director Albert Wesker. Part 2 is Agent Albert Wesker. Part 3 is Albert Wesker the Assassin. So this is like somewhere probably in part 4 where it's Albert Wesker the Seducer. And since it's Albert Wesker the Seducer, that is the end of Albert Wesker the Seducer, with the subtitle being Seduction by Happenstance. So, and he does seduce her kind of by happenstance. It wasn't that he, like in the original Wesker's Conquest, he actually seeks her out to seduce her. In this version, it's literally by happenstance. It was not what was trying to get taught. Sorry, I'm thirsty. Reading is thirsty work. Reading smut is thirsty work. But yeah, he wasn't trying. He didn't actively, like in the original story, he doesn't actively seek to seduce her. It just was like a lot of things in life where shit just kind of happened. So, alright. But what got me together, fucking hardcore, was the second part of Albert Wesker the Seducer, or the second section of Albert Wesker the Seducer. And I love this title, y'all. I was in the zone. So, in music, because I've been doing this opera thing, as y'all know, and I've been like having musical stuff in my ears. So, there's a thing in music called an etude. So, hang on a second. Let me pause and bring up the definition of an etude so I can give you the proper definition of what an etude is. Hang on just a second. Alright, so an etude, the definition of an etude, a short musical composition, typically for one instrument, designed as an exercise to improve the technique or demonstrate the skill of the player. It's also in mid-19th century French, means literally a study. So I wanted it, originally I was going to call this chapter a study in sybaritic delight. But I was like, or a lesson, and I was like, those are too basic of terms. So one of the things that happens in the chapter before it, Wesker's playing the piano, because as y'all know, Jake plays the piano. So I was like, where the fuck did he get that talent from? So I figured Wesker plays the piano. I don't know why, but I could figure we could make that work into his personality or whatever, or his hidden talents that nobody knows he fucking has. So, and that's actually how all that begins. He's actually in his library playing the piano when Annika comes downstairs and shit happens. So, actually a lot of shit happens, but yeah, stuff happens and that's what happens. So that's why in etude it goes along with the chapter before it. So also it's an etude in sybaritic delight, and it's a study in sybaritic delight. However, in this chapter, he's actually trying to teach her to be more kind of like sexually open, as it were, because as you read the relationship. I need a better title. I'm really not feeling this title, but whatever. As you read, you see that Edonian women are kind of like really strictly controlled by the men in their lives. Like they can't go out, they can't be alone with men who aren't family members. You can't call another man by his first name because it's too impersonal. Actually, there's a lot of cultures where you can't refer to a man who's not a relative by their first name. So, yeah, it's just, even when I was a kid, I was told you can't refer to men by their first names because it's just rude. So, yeah, so women, Edonian women, I have is very strictly controlled by the men in their world. So, after they sleep together, Annika kind of is like, well, what we did was sinful and we shouldn't do this. So Wesker's trying to get her, like, comfortable with doing stuff. So give me another second because I gotta find a good place to read the new Smut and Trash. So give me just a moment. Alright. I think I'm just gonna go for the gusto here. Okay, so as I just explained, he's trying to get her to kind of open up sexually a little bit. So, well, a lot of it, but shots out. Remember, if you looked at my Lolita vlog, remember when I made my best friend Frilly? So I texted her while she's at work the other day, and I was like, I know you're at work. I know I don't mean to bother you with some crazy fangirl shit, but I'm writing, and I'm like, do you think Wesker would go down on somebody? And she was like, oh yeah, and he would probably be really good at it because he's very methodical. So, with that being prefaced, and know that this video ain't safe for work, unless you got some earphones on and you like, ooh, this is juicy, don't tell nobody I'm listening to trash at work. So, alright, let me get some water. So, this is that part. And I stopped a little bit, I think, if it's more than 2 pages, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Hang on. It is more than 2 pages. Let me see. Okay. Let me see. Shit. Okay. Fuck it. We'll read it. Okay. Yeah, we'll read it. Let me go back up. Yeah. Yeah, it's not that much, so we'll just read it. And I'm sorry, I'm being indecisive, but like, I'm excited, but I'm also like blushing. So, and I'm glad you all can't see that because it's a shame. So, let's see. I will start in the very beginning of this. So, he's trying to get her to open up, and this is what he tells her. You are very adept at making me feel good, Annika, Albert whispered to her sensually. I would be delighted to return the favor. Albert took both his hands and cupped Annika's face while kissing her passionately, slipping his hot, slick tongue deep into her mouth. When the lusty kiss ended, he slid down the length of her body, planting soft kisses as he made his way downward. When he got to her belly button, he stuck out his tongue and began to slide it past the base of her torso, down the front of her womanhood. Then he parted her feminine folds with his hand and using his tongue to lap at her hot, sensitive bud. Oh, Mr. Moo, I can't. It's so scandalous. Oh, it's so damn scandalous. Oh, my Lord. Albert. Oh, no. Albert. Annika yelped frantically. This was a completely new sensation she had never experienced before. When he touched her secret place, it always felt so very good, but this felt sinfully divine. I love that line, oh my god. The way his tongue swirled and lapped at her sensitive parts sent her into swift and powerful orgasmic convulsions. Annika's womanhood gushed and quivered with sensual delight. Albert's mouth and tongue were extremely skilled at making her orgasm, and Annika enjoyed every moment of him orally pleasuring her. Oh my God, I'm sitting here drooling. Oh Lord. Her body was once again alight. Her breathing was heavy as she squealed and moaned in pleasure. The sounds that Annika was producing drove Albert into a frenzy. He delighted in educating her in this new way of reaching climax. He wanted to continue to bring her orgasms, so he planted his lips firmly onto her I can barely say this, her hot, swollen bud and clamped down on it, suckling her. I can barely say this, suckling her clit. Annika's squeals went from a mezzo soprano to a full coloratura. See, that's that opera influence from me being in this show. Coloratura is the highest sopranos, like one of the highest sopranos you can get. Back in the day, I used to be a coloratura. It's kind of in question if I can hit that shit anymore. So I think I'm just a mezzo with a really good upstairs level. So, and whatever. So, just to explain, mezzo soprano is kind of like second soprano. Coloratura is like up in the rafters. So like if you think of like singers, like the basses have the best seats and the coloraturas have the cheap seats. Like they were like $5 and that was all they could get in their lives. So Albert, Annika shrieked, I can't take this. I feel so hot. Albert heard her pleas but did not yield. Instead, he amplified his seductive activities by using the tip of his tongue to tease her tremendously sensitive and engorged clitoris. A gush of fluid poured from Annika's womanhood as her body quivered eagerly. Annika was climaxing out of control. Albert, meanwhile, was relentless. He continued to lap at not only her twitching bud, but the warm fluids that poured from, sorry I have to scroll up, deep within her. Annika had a very sweet, nearly honey-like taste, one that he relished consuming, and he did so with wild abandon. Ooh, Lordy Jesus! Okay, I gotta stop for a moment, because, like, my face is ablaze. Oh my God. Oh, I can't believe I'm rating such smut. But sometimes you gotta rate smut. You gotta get the smut out of your life. So, yup, that's what we wrote. So I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Basically, when he's done, she feels guilty, la-di-da. But he's not done with her. So basically, I will continue from after that. Okay. Albert smiled and kissed Annika passionately. Holding Annika tightly, he rolled over onto his back while Annika was partially draped on top of him. When the sensual kiss ended this time, he gently stroked Annika's long, fiery red hair and stared deeply into her eyes again. I would like you to try something for me, Annika, Albert said softly. Yes, Albert, Annika said sweetly. I want you to climb on top of me, he said, retaining his soft tone. Annika was perplexed by his unusual request, so he opted to gently guide her through this invitation. When Annika stood up, he gently grabbed her by the waist and guided her body onto his, but did not place her onto his massive phallus, at least not yet. Albert's large hand slowly slid up and down her curvaceous frame, which sent chills through Annika's body. Are you contented, Annika? Albert asked. Yes, Albert, Annika answered breathlessly. Good, he replied. Then Albert slid his hand back down her waist and stood her up a bit, placing her further down to prepare his manhood to enter her. I will guide you through this next phase, Annika, Albert said as he placed his phallus at the entrance of her warm slit. If you become uncomfortable or the sensations are excessively intense, I will stop immediately. Remember, I want you to feel good and relish what you are experiencing. Annika tried to hide her apprehensions with a smile. Albert noticed this right away and asked, Do you trust me, Annika? Of course I do, Albert, Annika answered without hesitation. Good. Good, he answered. Then I want you to know that I would never physically harm you. Which I had to talk about that in a second, but we'll finish this up because this is almost the end. I know, Albert, Annika said softly. Lean forward so I may kiss you, Albert said sweetly. Annika did as Albert asked, and the pair shared a sweet yet passionate kiss. As the pair kissed, Albert slowly inserted himself into Annika. Annika squirmed as Albert made his way inside her. Does it still hurt when I enter you, Annika? Albert asked, full of concern. No, she said softly. It just feels strange. Okay, so, oh God, so much smut and trash, I can't. But, yeah, so basically that line, you know that I would never physically harm you. The reason I put that line there is because, remember in what I read earlier where Annika had basically confessed that she loved Wesker and he was not trying to hear about it. So that's why it was important for him to kind of put a line of demarcation of, I'll never physically hurt you. Emotionally, I kind of can't vouch for, but physically, I'm not going to hurt you. So, which is actually probably saying a lot for Wesker, considering if you fuck up or whatever, you're getting a syringe in your back or neck or whatever is available to stick a syringe in. So, I figured that was important to put that there as kind of like, well, I won't physically harm you, but emotionally, probably. So, yeah, that's what I've been writing. Actually, I have a little bit that's after that, that's like later when she goes back to Adonia and she's pregnant with Jake and la-di-da, but I'm not going to read that because we all came here for smut and trash. So that's what I read. So, yeah, that's what I did, and that's what I've been writing, and oh my God, it's so hot. I can't. I can't. So, whew, I just had to share that hotness with y'all, so I hope you appreciate the smut and trash. So, I would try to get the rest of the story together so I could make this a big cohesive thing. It's just right now, a lot of stress at home, a lot of stress with the opera, so writing is kind of the only time where my brain is like focused. So, there is that. So, but I do have writer's block with that part that's right after the part on fanfiction.net. My brain is just like, I don't know what to do with this fucking part. So until my brain can get it together, we're just going to write latter parts of the story and then circle back to that one. So that is all I have, and I will see y'all either next time I have some smut and trash, or I don't even know. So later.